Well, certainly there is a Muslim majority that refuses to subscribe to the ISIS publicity machine. There is no doubt about that. Here in the Gulf region, political and religious leaders have for some time been muted, though, in their response to the militant threat. But criticism is building, and ISIS is proving itself something that these often uneasy bedfellows can bond over. I'm joined now by Abdul Khalik Abdullah, Professor of Political Science at Emirates University here, and so it's always a pleasure to have you on. The West at present consumed with concern about homegrown jihadis, the UK raising its threat level over the past 48 hours or so and introducing new legislation to try and prevent the export and import of militancy. Regionally, how concerned is the leadership here about the problem?
Homegrown jihadists we don't have here in the UAE. Okay, we never had it. I don't think we're going to have it. This is a very moderate country, the UAE. This is a very open country. So I think the version, the Islamic version that we have in here is not very conducive to jihadism, to extremism.
Right. So
however, it is.
What about the import? What about the guys coming back through here, for example?
It is very possible. It's very possible. They are all over the place. ISIS is looming very large, just next door in Iraq and all over the place. So you have to be on guard. And I think the UAE is wise enough to have a legislation as a preventive measure. But it's a regional problem rather than a homegrown UAE problem.
Let's talk about the wider region. Let's allude to the GCC, the grouping of these 6 countries in this sort of, sort of loosely grouped regional committee, as it were. You alluded to counter-terrorism measures and legislation which the UAE is getting on its books. Arguably the most powerful man in the GCC, Saudi Arabia's King Abdullah, has been the most vocal regional leader, it has to be said, when it comes to the ISIS threat. And he said, and I quote, "Terrorism knows no border and its danger could affect several countries outside the Middle East." He's been quoted as saying last week, "If we ignore them, I am sure they will reach Europe in a month and America in another month." At a meeting of the GCC on Saturday, its members made a commitment to act against terrorist threats that face the region and indeed the world, and to fight terrorist ideology which is contrary to Islam. Tonight we are hearing about the arrest of 88 potential militants, or those in Saudi Arabia who authorities believe were a threat. We've had the Grand Mufti being very outspoken about ISIS. Thoughts?
Well, Saudi Arabia has suffered from jihadism, from Al-Qaeda, from extremism, just as much as anybody else. And they know how dangerous it could be. And I think there is this ideological affinity that everybody's talking about. So the Saudis are on guard, Saudis are on alert. I think they are very serious about attacking the problem, both internally, if there is any, and later on, regionally. I think they are seeing the threat coming very close to their borders. So I think, no doubt, the Saudis are taking this very seriously.
While we're on the GCC, tell me how you read this rift, this ongoing rift between Saudi, the UAE, on the one hand, and Qatar on the other, because the Muslim Brotherhood story, which is a story of political Islam, of course, is one that there are real divisions about what is going on here.
We had a meeting in Jeddah just almost a week ago, and I think they pressed the freeze button to freeze the problem from deteriorating, from escalating any further, and from falling into, going into a free fall. So we are so relieved that they did freeze the problem. However, the problem is not resolved. It is going to be resolved once we see the 3 ambassadors back to Doha. So it's a freeze rather than a resolution of as problem.
These are ambassadors that were withdrawn from 3 of the UAE, the GCC countries back in March as a statement against Doha. All right, I want you to have a look at this this graphic that I'm going to bring up here. So here's a reminder of the Islamic militant groups in North Africa and the Middle East. I'm going to get wider than the GCC here and get across the entire region. Al-Qaeda may be the roots of the tree of terror. It was founded in the late 80s, of course, by Osama bin Laden. The Taliban established their own Islamic State in Afghanistan and sheltered Al-Qaeda. AQ offshoots have also surfaced in recent years, including AQ in the Arabian Peninsula, based, of course, in Yemen, and we are again seeing problems there to date. And Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb, operating in North Africa. Al-Qaeda has inspired other groups like Somalia's Al-Shabaab. Again, an attack on the leadership there from a US drone only in the last 24 hours. And Boko Haram, the group behind the mass kidnapping of more than 200 teenage girls in April. Al-Qaeda in Iraq was established in 2004, but over time, it evolved and turned into the newest branch of the ideological tree and also the most dangerous, the Islamic State in Iraq and Syria, or ISIS, or if you were listening to those who are supporters, they will call it the IS, the Islamic State. Do you, by the way, call it the Islamic State? Do you dignify this group
Not at all.
with that term?
Not at all. Not at all, Becky. I don't think they represent Islam in any version of it, in any iota of conceivable possibility that Islam really breeds this kind of thing. You have extremism, you have fascism. Every society sometimes grows through these episodes. So, and this is one of us, yes, but these are extremes and not necessarily representatives of the main Islam.
I'm just wondering briefly whether you think it might be ISIS or IS that may eventually bring the two regional enemies together, Iran and Saudi, in one fight against this one group.
They are talking. We have seen them talking in Jeddah just last week when an Iranian went to Jeddah to talk. However, they still have a lot of problems to resolve. ISIS is once again looming large in the horizon. It's going to bring a lot of people together. Let's hope the Iranian and the Saudis finally talk how to confront this together. The Americans are in there, the Europeans are there. So many different people who were never thought in our wildest imagination that they will talk to each other are talking. So the threat is real, the threat is imminent, and I think it might push some, miracles could happen to bring people who were never can talk to each other together and cooperate.
The old adage, which has always been attached to the Middle East, my enemy's enemy is my friend, and we are seeing these shifting alliances and relations primarily as a result, as you say, of ISIS here in this region. Fascinating times, frightening times, but fascinating times. Always a pleasure. Thank you very much
Thank
indeed.
you to have me.